want to get him now, or maybe not at all. Okay, we are going to take a quick break, just play a little bit of lead music and a re-entry, and then I will have my thoughts on the NFL year-end awards. You are listening to Cinder Sports. I am your host, John O'Donnell. Thank you for listening.
Cinder Sports isn't your weekly recap. It's about host John O'Donnell's view on the week in sports, including interviews with interesting personalities, John's opinions on topics that you may have missed, and entertainment through analysis of the sports we love. Now, from the Dream Big Studios, here's John O'Donnell.
Hello and welcome back to the Dream Big Studios here in Akron, Ohio. You are listening to Cinder Sports Radio. I am your host, John O'Donnell. And as always, I encourage you to follow us on Twitter at Cinder Sports. Facebook, our Facebook page is Cinder Sports, and our email address, cinderblocksports@gmail.com. Love to hear feedback from all of you. Would love to get a follow or a like on iTunes or wherever you get our podcast. On Saturday, the AP announced its NFL year-end awards. These are the official NFL year-end awards. There are a couple other versions of this, the Pepsi fan vote. I believe there's a coaches awards vote as well. But these are really the ones that for the last 40-plus years have been associated as the official awards for MVP, Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, things like that. One of the hottest races, and really one of the few that was in contention when you consider MVP and Comeback Player of the Year and even Coach of the Year, seemed pretty known without much controversy. The Offensive Rookie of the Year had some controversy. In a close vote, Saquon Barkley had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. He played on a terrible Giants team, and he narrowly beat Baker Mayfield, who played on a less terrible Browns team. And I don't know if you heard, but he also set a rookie record for touchdown passes. More on that in a minute. Lots of people in Ohio and Oklahoma are upset that Baker did not win the Rookie of the Year. And they are right. The wrong guy won. The Rookie of the Year should be Quentin Nelson, offensive guard from the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Mr. Nelson did receive 2 of the 30 votes. They were probably from either family members or writers in Indiana, where he plays professionally and also played college ball at South Bend for Notre Dame. Now, it may be a couple of Notre Dame alumni who finally gave the big man the credit he deserves. Look, of course he wasn't going to win. The Associated Press has handed out 42 of these awards. A non-quarterback, running back, or wide receiver has won exactly the same number as me. 0. It's an award that's handed out to the best first-year skill position player on offense, and that really should stop. And if it doesn't stop, we really need to give guys like Quentin Nelson, guys like Joe Thomas, a chance to win this award. This should be an award that goes to the most impactful rookie. A lot of times with MVP votes, we talk about the impact the player has to his team. Well, Quentin Nelson fits that mold 100 times over, and we'll talk about that soon. Now, Joe Thomas did come close to winning this award. In 2007, Joe Thomas finished second behind Adrian Peterson for Rookie of the Year. So, it isn't that an offensive lineman hasn't come close, but Joe Thomas is a transcendent figure at offensive line. He's easily thought of as one of the top 3 offensive tackles of all time, and very, very good. He was not a great run blocker, but he was an amazing pass blocker. And I'm telling you right now that Quentin Nelson may be better. Quentin Nelson is an absolute beast in the run game. He is a battering ram with a tank towing behind him. And in the pass protection game, he is underrated and he is very good at protecting one Andrew Luck. Let's look at the impact he had on the Colts offensive line. Cinder Sports, not all about the stats. I like to go outside the stats and tell you my points of view on what they may or may not mean, but here the stats really are required for the argument. In 2017, the Colts rushed for 1,660 yards. They had 11 touchdowns, and they averaged 3.7 yards per carry. Those numbers are not good. They ranked 19th or worse in every category. They were 28th in yards per carry. Now, what should be noted here is they had to run the football in 2017. They had Jacoby Brissett as their quarterback. That is not a good thing. So they had to run the ball. They did it poorly. And in 2018, while they were still towards the bottom third in rushing yards and yards per carry, They were not below 22nd in any of those categories in the NFL. It was a step up, and the focus of the offense was not the running game. So even though yards rushing were not super high, this was a passing attack led by Andrew Luck. And we'll talk about how well they did in that passing attack in a second. Understand that in the rushing game, they upped their touchdowns to 16 while also rushing the ball 50 less times. So with less of a focus on the run game, they scored more touchdowns and they were more effective. But in the passing game, that passing game is where Quentin Nelson and his fellow linemen really made a difference. Now, look, in 2017, the passing game of the Colts was anemic. That is an insult to the word anemic. But a lot of that had to do with Jacoby Brissett. You remember Jacoby Brissett, right? He was traded from the Patriots because he was going to rival Tom Brady as the next Patriots quarterback. Well, I don't think that was true because he got traded to the Colts and was terrible. Now, looking at the numbers in 2017, not the yardage or the touchdowns, because Brissett did stink and Andrew Luck does not stink. The Colts gave up 56 sacks. That is ridiculous. And here's where the Colts offensive line made its mark. As expected, getting Andrew Luck back made a huge difference in their offense. But protecting Andrew Luck was something that they have never done well. But they did it well in 2018. In 2018, the offensive line gave up 18 sacks. That is 1/3 of the sacks from 2017, and it was including 150 more pass attempts. So the Colts dropped back, threw the ball a lot, and Andrew Luck stayed clean. Also, let's consider the record of the Colts. In 2017, they were 4-12 and awful. In 2018, they were 10-6. This included a 9-1 run in the last 10 games and a playoff win on the road. By the end of the season, they were one of the best teams in the NFL, and they were somebody's dark horse pick for the Super Bowl. Now, I know they got Andrew Luck back, but that play of that offensive line, anchored by Quentin Nelson, be no mistake, he was MVP of that offensive line. That was a key piece to their run, their record, and their success. Okay, stats aside, watch Quentin Nelson play the game of football. He grinds people up. He makes pancake blocks a special every day for breakfast on Sundays in Indianapolis. He's tough at the point of attack. He can pull from his original position, run down the line, and smash people. He's mean and he's gritty. These are things you want in an offensive lineman. He was considered one of the best players in the draft. He is one of the best offensive linemen in the league. And he deserved to be Rookie of the Year. That being said, we all understand why. Rookie of the Year goes to the sexy pick, the quarterback, the wide receiver, the running back. And this year, there were two worth debating. The real debate came down between Baker Mayfield and Saquon Barkley. These were the top two picks in the draft. They played well. They played at those key skill positions. So they were the ones that were going to be in the running for Rookie of the Year. And not only was it logical and traditional to have two players like this battling it out for Rookie of the Year, they made it fun. Saquon Barkley, he won the Pepsi Fan Choice Rookie of the Year. Baker Mayfield won the Coaches Rookie of the Year. So they split the first two votes, and then they had a friendly wager going on to the official AP contest. Here, the winner is going to pick out a chain or a necklace that the loser is going to have to pay for. So these guys are friends. They create a rivalry we could follow, and that played well in the media. Now, in terms of play on the field, Saquon Barkley started out hot. He fizzled a bit, but he did set a rookie running back record for receptions and had over 1,200 yards rushing and 2,000 yards total from scrimmage. And this was on a terrible New York Giants team. Eli Manning is really, really bad at playing NFL quarterback right now. OBJ was hurt, and the rest of that offense was just kind of scrambling to find its place. The offensive line wasn't as bad as it was last year, but that's not really saying much. That offensive line was terrible. So to say it's a little less than terrible, not the biggest compliment in the world. But what it does say is that even with, let's just call it a decent offensive line, defenses could scheme for Saquon Barkley. They did not have to worry about the passing game much, if at all. Unlike quarterbacks, where we say you need film to figure them out after a year or their first year, and we'll see how that works with Pat Mahomes and if people figure him out. Running games are less complicated. They're more basic. You can only scheme so much offensively in running the ball. Defenses typically have a shorter learning curve here. passing games, depending on the quarterback, can just be more difficult to understand in a short period of time. But regardless, Barkley was impressive and explosive. He was less so at the end of the year, and that was right as Baker Mayfield was playing his best. But Saquon Barkley had an unbelievable season. He had the rookie running back reception record. He had a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns, a lot of big plays. And again, it was in a big market like New York, and it was for a bad team. So he stood out, even though the rest of the team around him wasn't very good. Baker Mayfield, had the season Browns fans have been waiting for decades. He was benched by the soon-to-be-fired, should have been fired, and then was fired, Hugh Jackson, at the start of the season. Barkley got his chance in Week 3, when Tyrod Taylor went down and was hurt. And get ready for it. I don't know if you've heard, but Baker Mayfield set an NFL rookie record in touchdowns. Better than Russell Wilson. Better than Peyton Manning. And in only 13 games. Or was it 14 games? Cleveland fans cannot tell you that enough. And I get it. Baker Mayfield was good. The Browns have been bad. It's good to have that kind of success and that kind of feeling in Cleveland. But let's pump the brakes. Let's make sure we understand. What Browns fans may not tell you, or maybe don't even consider, is that Mayfield's success has a lot to do with the team around him. Unlike Saquon Barkley, the Browns have real weapons on offense. Jarvis Landry is a top 15 receiver and a young quarterback's best friend coming out of the slot. David Njoku is growing as expected. He's in his second year. But now he's catching the ball. That's a real treat and a pretty good feature for a pass-catching tight end. And Nick Chubb and Duke Johnson create one heck of a backfield behind an offensive line that lost Joe Thomas but had two of the top-rated offensive guards by Football Focus. In other words, yes, Mayfield was great. But unlike Saquon Barkley, he had a lot of talent around him. Oh, and I don't know if you've heard, but he broke Peyton Manning and Russell Wilson's record in 13 games. That is 3 less than the other guys. He should have won Rookie of the Year because of that alone. First of all, no, he shouldn't have. And secondly, let's look at what those numbers really mean. In 2012, Russell Wilson tied the then rookie passing touchdown record at 26. He played for the 11-5 Seahawks as a rookie. He threw under 400 passes. He had 26 touchdowns. He also had almost 500 rushing yards, and he had 4 touchdowns on the ground. In comparison, in 14 games, that's right, 14 games, Baker Mayfield came in against the Jets. He threw 23 passes. That's more than he threw in 2 of his starts. We're counting that 14th game. And Browns fans are going to count that game too because the Browns won that game. So in 14 games, Baker Mayfield threw the ball almost 500 times. Almost 100 more times than Russell Wilson. And Baker Mayfield had 14 interceptions in those lesser amount of tries. Russell only had 10 interceptions in his season. Now Peyton Manning's rookie season, that's a bit different. Peyton Manning played on a terrible 3-13 Colts team. He flung the ball around a league-high 574 times for also a league-high 28 interceptions. Doing all of that, he also accumulated 26 touchdowns. That is a lot of touchdowns, but most would argue it is the worst of Peyton Manning's career. Outside of the 7-19 touchdown to interception ratio, where he won the Super Bowl in his last year. Again, stats don't always tell the story of a season. And while you have to respect that Mayfield had a good year, a great year when you consider the dumpster fire the Browns have been, the touchdown record isn't and shouldn't be a shoo-in for the Rookie of the Year award. This should go to, in my opinion, it should go to the most impactful rookie on his team. Now, all 3 of these guys, Quentin Nelson, Saquon Barkley, Baker Mayfield, they were all great, impactful rookies. Quentin Nelson's team finished with the best record, was a train wreck at the start of the season, and he had a lot to do with its turnaround. I know offensive linemen aren't going to win Rookie of the Year. He should have. He got robbed. Overall, all in all, the league did see some great young talent come in. The defensive Rookie of the Year was the Colts' Darius Leonard. Darius is a second-round pick. He came from a FCS or football championship school. This is a school that does not participate in the major bowls or the football national championship playoffs.